All right, my name is Joe. I'm a music promoter. I've done that for over 10 years now, so a little while. And I'm currently at the Futuresound Group, which is based in Leeds. We promote shows across Yorkshire. We do like 600 plus a year, like quite a lot at the minute. And we're involved in some festivals as well. So I'm responsible for Live at Leeds Festival. We have Gold Sounds, Get Together, Slam Dunk, like quite a bit. So we do a lot over the area. So I'll do a little overview of what I'm prepared to talk about today, and then we'll get into it. Oh, there we go. So we'll talk about what a promoter is. I know, like, you probably all know that, but it's there's a bit of nuance to it, and a lot of people think promoters do slightly different things. So I'll talk about it in the context of what I do and what I'll speak about, so that we all know what we're talking about. We'll then talk about when is the best time to approach a promoter in your career as a musician. And we'll talk about local promoters and national promoters and the differences between them and how each is useful. Then we'll talk about support slots and headline shows. Again, the differences between them, what's useful at what time in your career. Then I'll talk about what promoters look for in an artist. So when you're pitching to a promoter, what sort of things they're looking out for. Then we will speak about how to grow your audience with your promoter. So rather than seeing a promoter as just someone that books your shows, like how you can work together towards a shared goal. Then we'll talk about booking agents, the differences between that and a promoter, how you get them and what they're useful for. Then I wanted to speak a little bit about like unreputable promoters and booking agents, what to watch out for, because there's like a lot of people out there. And then we'll speak about the ways that I think are good to network and create opportunities, which there is plenty of. And then a little bit about gigging in 2022, especially like post-COVID, and how that's a little bit different now. So we'll start with what the role of a promoter is in this context. So the promoter is responsible for the overall organisation of a gig. So it's more than just putting the show on. There's like quite a lot to it, and ultimately they're the person at the top that is responsible. So a promoter will approach venues. So they will be the link between the artist and the venue. They will approach artists. I promote quite a lot. I promote quite a lot of artists, and to promote a lot of artists, that means approaching lots and lots of artists and being approached by them. Budgeting, so making sure the gig can financially happen and make sense for everybody. Then the people that agree the terms and the contracting. A promoter will then oversee the marketing. Obviously, bands market their shows as well. But from like a spending money point of view, that's a promoter's job. Dealing with inquiries up until show date, and that includes ticketing, and then delivering the event itself. Oh, and then I just need to move my little Zoom bar down. Oh yeah, different to a booking agent. But as I said, we'll speak about the booking agents later on. So we'll start off what the difference is between local promoters and national promoters. So local promoters generally only put on shows in one city or town, like you probably all know some local promoters. And then a sort of extension on local promoters, and what Futuresound is a regional promoter. So we only book shows across Yorkshire as a general rule. So I'm from Hull originally. We're based in Leeds, so I do loads in Leeds, quite a bit in Hull. We do a little bit in Sheffield, a bit in York, but generally within Yorkshire. I guess the sort of reason I think that's a good thing is because you have like local knowledge, which is important when you're booking shows and marketing them. And then you get national promoters, which put on shows everywhere. There's lots of them. Some of them are very big, like Live Nation or AEG, where they own lots of stuff and they put on lots of shows and they're responsible for very big artists. I think all local promoters, regional promoters, and national promoters all have pros and cons, and they're all helpful. They're all worth speaking about. They're all worth approaching. As I said, local promoters, more specialised, they'll understand the market that you're looking to work in. They'll have like better ties with the venues themselves. They'll know specific marketing opportunities, whether that's like online or physical postering opportunities and things like that. National promoters are really great, if you like, which we'll come on to later, actually talking about tour supports, because the national promoter will often put on every single gig for an artist in an area, or in a country, or maybe even across the world. So they can be really helpful with tour supports and getting out of your own city. When to approach a promoter. So I think this is fairly basic, because as soon as you're ready to perform live and you want to perform live, and that's where you're at, that's when you approach a promoter. Like you can put on your own shows, but I wouldn't attempt that. I mean, we'll talk about that, but I wouldn't attempt that immediately. A promoter is going to be the person that helps put you on. So I would, as soon as you're ready, reach out to promoters, and we'll go through exactly how to do that soon. A good promoter will engage in regular conversation to help form your plan. So they will like speak to you all the way through it. There should be like a lot more than 1 or 2 emails. It should be a conversation about what the best shows are for you to do, what the best like plan of attack is to get where you want to be. I've put here, it's good to work with multiple promoters at an early stage. Like just work with everyone that you can, really. Like working with multiple people is a good thing. It helps get you out more. You don't need to overcommit to like working with one promoter or anything like that when you're new. It's best to like reach out, speak to loads of people. They've all got different markets that they can help you in. They've got different like opportunities. They've got social media pages with different people on them. They put on shows that different people come to. So work with different promoters, and that's going to help you like spread your wings a bit more. When you've put on a few shows, like you don't have to work with a promoter. I thought it was important to mention that, like especially if you can sell tickets by yourself and you might want to put your own gig on. Like I think that's a really good thing to do. A lot of artists that we work with in certain cities put their own shows on and then use promoters for other cities. Bands that I work with do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, it takes a lot of work and there's a lot to learn about doing that. But yeah, I don't think that especially once you can sell a few tickets, that you don't always have to work with a promoter, especially in your own area. So this is what to have in place before approaching a promoter. So this is what I sort of look for and expect to see, and sort of come from there. So a rough plan is like really important. So sometimes like you've made your first piece of music and you're like, right, I've been in the practice room a few times and you're like, right, I want to start playing gigs. And you just go from there and you start firing off your music to everybody. And it's important at that point to like sit and reflect and think, what do I want to be? What's my plan? Where do I want to be? If it's like you want to do it as a hobby or a career, and the way you can achieve that. And I would just sit down and map it out. Like it's really important, I think, to have an idea of where you want to be and how you want to get there and the things that you want to do to get there. Even if it's just a rough timeline for like the year ahead, like in this year, I want to play this many gigs, try and get to this many Spotify streams. And it like anything that shows a goal is very helpful when you approach a promoter, because it sort of separates you from the people that are just firing on the music without thought and the people that are sitting and considering and making a plan. It's good. It's not essential, this, but I think it's good to have your social media pages ready when you're new. And if you're not new and you've been going a while, then just have them have content on them. That's something that you're going to need to push the gig. So if you've not got that sorted, then a promoter might favour somebody who has got that sorted. So yeah, if you're using socials, then just make sure they're ready and make sure you're on top of them. Recorded music is important. Sometimes people reach out before they've recorded stuff, which I don't want to generalize stuff, but it is kind of helpful when you've got a song professionally recorded or a decent demo. And a release plan to go alongside it, because that helps the promoter decide like, well, you'll be good for this show because your single's out around then or just before then, so you might get some press off that, you might get some local press off that, and that'll make it best to play that show rather than a sooner show or a later show. So that's why that's helpful. And a sort of little point I put there is that, and this is just a general industry tip that I find, like at Futuresound we have a management arm, and I won't go into being a manager in this meeting, but something that they always look to do is have like your next piece of music ready, because a question you're always going to get asked is, especially if you're approaching labels and things like that, is, oh, this is great, have you got anything else you can share? And just having your next release ready and being one step ahead rather than just immediately releasing what you've created is very helpful when approaching a promoter, and as I say, like music industry as a whole. Live videos are great. That's always what I will go to second. If somebody sends me like an EPK or like a kit of explaining what they are as an artist, the first thing I'll do is listen to the recorded music, so SoundCloud or Spotify, and then if they've got a live video, I always go to that. So that can be either like a live setup that's recorded in the studio, which you can kind of do yourself to an extent, or if you've played like a gig or a festival that offers, or like BB's introducing set that offers like a live video that you get at the end of it, then that's really helpful because it helps the promoter know exactly your live setup, what you sound like, how it's going to work, if it's going to work with the artist that they're looking for it. So it's super helpful if you've got access to one of those. Again, this is just a general tip, but having a manager at the point of when you approach a promoter is very helpful. A manager, it doesn't have to be like a huge company like Red Light or anything like that. It can just be somebody who's vouching for you. You don't have to like have a contract signed or anything. Just something like, I mean, I managed a band when I first started, and they were just my mates. And just having me there as a buffer between them and the promoter and further industry really helps, because you've got someone that's sort of fully invested in you without having the exact same feelings about it, and they can talk about it more objectively. And for that reason, if you can, I know not everyone can, and sometimes you might be passionate about it just being you, and that's fine in some cases, but I would say if you do have a manager acting on your behalf, then that's going to be helpful when you approach a promoter, because I would say that I generally prefer working with a manager than an artist direct. I think that's true for most promoters. Next, I wanted to talk about local support slots. So that's because when you're new, that'll be like your first route into gigging most of the time. That's what I'd recommend as your first route into gigging. You don't want to go try and headline shows before you've sort of cut your teeth. Some reasons why is that it's low pressure. Like, you're not the one responsible for the show doing badly or well. Like, you just go and you play, and hopefully there's not too much pressure on you. Also, people aren't there just to see you, so you don't have to have some mad production or anything. You just go and play songs, and hopefully people enjoy them. It's a lot less costly than touring or doing headline shows. So again, when you're a new artist, you haven't got any funding or anything like that, and you're just sorting yourself out, then going down to your local venue and supporting someone is a good way to do it. And it's a good place to, like, as I said, like, hear, practice live, hone your craft and work out. Yeah, it takes a while, like, especially if you're a band, but any artist at all, it takes a while to like get into your groove, and you need to kind of do these slots to get into that, I think. Another thing about support slots, is a good way to like nick an audience. The person that you're supporting's probably got an audience if they're doing a headline show, and if you can like rock up and impress some of their fans, then it's a great way to build. And I suppose this gets into the networking element of it, but meeting other artists is like invaluable. And if you can gig with a similar artist, even if you're like first on supporting them and you don't play to too many people, if you can like speak to them, get to know them, learn how they got where they are, take tips off them, then that's just as important as anything else in my view. I've put here only to take appropriate offers. Like, sometimes you might get offered things that aren't right, and it's fine to say no to things. Like, you don't want to be on a bill that isn't suited. You don't want to play a venue if it doesn't work for your setup. There's multiple reasons you might not want to take it, and I think valuing yourself from the off is pretty important. Like, just say yes to the right things, and it'll help in the long run, I think. I spoke here about some good ways of trying to get local support slots. So if you like trying to find the shows that you want to support on, is obviously where they do that. And if you look out at listings, follow the promoter's socials. Like, if you're a decent promoter, then every artist you promote is going to ask for you to announce their shows on your social media. So if you just follow a promoter's social media, you're going to see every gig that they're putting on, and most of the time you would announce a headliner before you look at booking support. So that's your window. When a gig gets announced, chip in and be like, do you need a support for this? They might not know straight away, but if you can just keep that conversation going until they do book a support, then that's the way that I book local supports mostly. And yeah, if you just name the gigs you want to support on, that's also really helpful. I find that if an artist comes to me, rather than just saying, can I play a gig? if an artist comes to me and says, can I play this gig at this date at the Key Club? And I'll be like, I'll be more likely when I'm looking for a support for that day. In fact, I actually make a log. If somebody asks to specifically support on a show, and I know a lot of promoters do this, I like log that. So when it comes to looking at local supports, I'll go with the person that asked to specifically support that show, because it shows there's an interest there from the artist. They value it. And that always makes it a better gig on the night, I find. And yeah, also another great way is just go into local shows. Like you might not, I don't know, you might be tired or you don't like fancy going or whatever, but if you just go and meet people, so many opportunities come up that way. Go to like local band nights or go to headline shows, find out if there's a support you can go see or a headline you want to go see, and meet people there and try and get as much out of them that way. I know it's hard, like it's really hard to just coldly approach people, and I get that, but if you just hang around in the places long enough, you'll start seeing the same faces, and it's really true that those people are going to help you out making it in the long run. And bear in mind, you might have to start small and build up. Like that's sometimes people approach us like, can I support so-and-so at the academy? And there's artists that we've worked with for like a year or more that have sort of like proven the worth and built the way up. And it's, if you just pitch for some smaller shows at first, you'll do well at them. You'll quickly build your way up to supporting the bigger stuff. So yeah, just one step at a time. And then I wanted to separate out local support slots and supporting people out of town, because they're both completely different things, really. When you support someone locally, you're probably going to bring a few people down, which is helpful to the promoter at that point. Whereas when you're supporting further afield, it's not always like that. So I wanted to separate the two things out. So that's what I'll go through now. Yeah, I would do this after you've done some of those local support slots. Like it's then a good time to go. Once you've done local support slots, you would A, start looking at your headline shows, which we'll come up to, but B, look at these further field support slots, like outside of your city or town. A really good way to do this, and I always sort of draw an example of a night in Hull that's been long running called the Sesh, where it's a great free entry night. Like it's on a Tuesday night, which sounds weird, but it's always busy. So it kind of means that you can save a weekend for a city that doesn't do so well on a Tuesday, and go to Hull on a Tuesday, and you can play a free entry night that's always busy, has music loving fans, and yeah, it's something I recommend to all bands when they're starting out that night. So that's sort of where I've taken inspiration from with this. When I said like regular gig nights are useful for that reason, yeah, you can go and find somewhere where the fans already are when you're out of town, because you might not have a following there yet, and you don't want to go and support somewhere where you don't have a following. You might struggle to get people in, so that's a good way. And engage with the people that are putting those sorts of nights on, because you'll often find that they're either the same people or they're linked with the people that are putting on the bigger ticketed shows as well. An important thing, again, drawing on my own experience, is being realistic about your worth outside your area. As I mentioned, when you do a local support, there's sort of an expectation from everyone that you might be able to bring a few friends down, but when you're gigging outside your area, don't tell a promoter that you can do that if you can't, because it's just going to like look bad in the long run. Like it's fine to not be worth tickets outside your town. That's when everyone's starting. That's how it is. No one expects anything else. So just be realistic and don't sort of oversell yourself in that way. And to that end, if you do have a fan base in certain towns, go for those. So once you've done your support slots in your local area, I always think the best thing to do is go for support slots if you've got mates in a certain town because you've lived there before, or you've been to college there or whatever. There's a reason that you have a pool of friends there, even if it's 10 people that you know will come and see you. That's a good place to target, because one, you'll impress the promoter by slinging 10 tickets in a town you're not from, and two, you'll play in front of 10 people that will probably react positively to your music and help and make you look good in front of the promoter and the other bands. And I've said there, let the promoter know if you do have a following there. So if you do have a following in another area, just find the promoters there via the methods that we've spoken in on the last slide, and speak to them and just say, look, I've got some mates in Bristol. They've all said they'll come. I can sell 15 tickets. I'll get them down. And I'd say data's another one. Like some people email me like, we really need to play Leeds because it's our second biggest Spotify town. We've never been there. And that actually does sometimes translate. So it's worth letting people know that, I think, when you're approaching them. So further afield tour supports, I've spoken about tour supports here, which is sort of a bit of a dream really, because you can get on them and you can tour with a band. It's really low pressure. You can go around sort of getting their fans on board. I mean, we work with a band called Hummer that went on tour with Manic Street Preachers, which sounds massive, but it was just from like, they did one gig where they opened and Manic Street Preachers were impressed and just asked them if they wanted to go on tour with them. I think the timing was pretty lucky. But from that, they've gone from not having any fans around the country to having like 50 in each city. Like, so they can kind of go anywhere and sell 50 tickets now. If you can get on them, it's incredibly useful, I think. And lastly, sort of, I just wanted to like consider each side of it, that touring can be expensive. And again, only take shows that have value to you. It's going to cost a lot of money, especially if you're in a band, but even as a solo artist, to go to these cities and like feed yourself, transport there and back, you might have to stay over if it's far away. It can cost a small fortune, and I would only take on ones that have some value. Again, value doesn't mean that pay you enough, because for a tour support, sadly, you're probably not going to get paid enough to cover all those things. But if it's one way you like really think you'll gain some audience from it, or you think it's a really good look, and as long as they offer a few quid to help towards your cost, then it would be worth taking. I'll talk a bit about headline shows now that we've done the support thing. Once you have an audience developed, promoters will book you on a headline show. So hopefully by doing the local supports and things in this period, you will have already built up a bit of a relationship with some local promoters or regional promoters or even national. And at that point where you've started to get a bit of a fan base, a promoter will put you on a headline show. At that point, it should be slightly easier to get gigs if you're like worth tickets. It's easier, and I would say looking at similar artists and finding out the promoter is a good indicator. So if you're working out who to work with, say you've got a few options, you've done some support slots with X, Y, and Z, and you're thinking who's the best, I would look at the artist that you sort of align yourself with and see who promotes them. That's usually a good start. Or vice versa, look at the promoters that you're working with and see what artists they're booking the headline shows for. You can even reach out and speak to people and be like, do you think this promoter's decent? I'm thinking of somebody to work with on my headline shows. Because it is at the point where you start working with promoters on headline shows, if you get it right, you'll work for that promoter forever. And if the promoter gets it right, they'll work with that artist forever. And that's the point where you sort of stop working with absolutely everyone and you would start working with the same pool of people. It's easy to prove your worth if you've sold some tickets when you're looking at a headline show, and when you're looking at repeat headline shows, keep all your stats, keep your ticket sale figures, make sure if you've brought 50 people down to a show, make sure the promoter knows that. Keep on top of like your social figures and stats and have something to prove your worth to them there, and you'll end up getting better deals. So again, only work with promoters that you value. So once you can like sell tickets in an area and you're looking to put on headline shows, you have the bargaining power then. It's kind of switched from the previous slides. If you can sell some tickets, it's kind of balls in your court. So I would pick the right promoters to work with, and you don't have to just say yes to the first person that asks it if you're at this point in your career. And a way that I would look at picking a promoter when you're in that position is find out the ones that can help you long term. Like, promoters generally do quite a few things. Like I spoke about what we do at Futuresound, and if you speak to them and say, if you've got multiple promoters coming at you asking to put on shows, just honestly ask, like, what can you do aside from putting me on a headline show? Like, if I do well on a headline show, can you put me on a festival, or can you look at trying to sort me out a tour support if it's a national promoter? And like, find out the opportunities that those promoters that you're potentially working with can offer you, and then that picks a sort of that makes it easier to pick. Briefly, I did a festivals tab in here because I realised that I hadn't spoken about festivals, and it's very different to local shows and headlines. Obviously, festivals are great. Everyone has a great time. You get to play in front of people that are having a great time. It's kind of the dream if you can get a good festival run. You're playing in front of a new audience, music fans. Like a lot of festivals, people have paid a lot of money to be there. You wouldn't do that if you didn't like music. And well, depending on the festival, but for the main part. So you're playing in front of people who like music, and that's why it's a good opportunity. It's a really good experience. Playing festivals is difficult. Like as an artist, you often get thrown onto a stage with like a quick line check. You don't get the luxury of a lot of time to sound check like you might do at a headline show. But I kind of think that's good character building, and that sets you up for doing bigger stages in the future if you can handle that. I thought it worth mentioning when I'm talking about how great they are, that because they're great, they're pretty difficult to get. We'll talk about booking agents later, but without a booking agent, it's tough. But I wanted to talk a little bit from my experience with Live at Leeds, how you can get festivals like without a booking agent. So a lot of that is through apply to play. So for Live at Leeds, we run an apply to play scheme where we keep a handful of slots that are just for artists who have applied directly through the website who don't have a booking agent, to try and like keep it fair, because not everybody has one, and it sort of feels unfair that by not having one you miss out. So a lot of festivals do exactly the same thing. Even like Glastonbury has an apply to play. Doing that is the best way for an unsigned artist to get through to play in a festival. But they don't run all the time. So check the festival's websites and social medias. Try and keep an eye on when the last one ran. So you can normally just, if you Google like Glastonbury Emerging Talent Competition, you'll be able to see when the last one ran. Work out when to have everything in place for, so you can approach it that way. Usually the festival will list it on the socials at the website, but they won't all year round because they don't run it all year round. We normally run ours about 2 months before the festival. But if they're not advertising at the point that you're looking for festivals, just message them directly. People will get back to you. We get it with Live at Leeds quite a lot. People just say, when can I apply to play? And we just say, like, check our socials a couple of months before. It's a quick answer, and you should get an answer, hopefully. I thought I'd speak a little bit about what I, as Futuresound, look for in artists when I hear from them, like on a personal thing. And one of the big parts of that is organisation. As we spoke earlier about somebody having a plan, and somebody who's already put a bit of thought into how they want to be as an artist, that sort of like sets people aside, I would say. Keen and passionate. So this is whether I'm meeting them and like whether they've emailed me or I've bumped into them or I'm at an event and they've come to talk to me. You can normally tell who's passionate about the project pretty quick. And obviously as a promoter, I'd prefer to work with somebody that's passionate, because there's more chance of them carrying on to do great things if they're like super into it straight off. So if you can kind of get that across, or if that's in an email, just spend some time. Emails to promoters don't have to be very formal. Like I would spend some time just trying to get your personality across, especially if you're making like a generic pitch and you're sending it to different people. Just try and get your personality across pretty quick, whether that's in the email body or with an attached video or whatever. It's kind of helpful to know. Info and data to back up the claims, that's pretty big. Sometimes people come in and just say like, I'm worth 100 tickets, or I've done this, and without saying why that is, it sometimes just can sound a bit hyperbolic. And it would, if you can just have some data, if you have information, like I said before, keep your data from past shows, keep your ticket worth, and if you have that to back up your claims, then I find that helpful. Obviously good music is the basic thing to say, because that's what we're all looking for and that's how the old industry works. But I thought it was good to mention that it doesn't need to be like amazing quality, especially if somebody's starting out. I'd rather hear a shoddily recorded demo of a good song than a really highly well-made recording of a bad or a not great song. So I think it's important to stress that. Obviously, I look for like strong socials. Like that's how it always is. If you can like prove that you've got some buzz around you from your social medias, then that's going to be helpful to you promoting the show, because I know you've got a lot of people that you can speak to about it. It kind of works both ways. Now I'll talk about working with a promoter to grow your audience. I think something that I've always thought is that I just don't want to be seen as a booker. I want to be more of like a promoter and someone that helps you get to where you want to be using the tools that they can use, rather than just somebody that's plugging holes. And yeah, so I'll talk about that a bit. it's in a good promoter's interest to work with you long term and grow your audience together. If a promoter's like willing to work with you in the long term, and you're willing to work with them in the long term, you can both grow together, then that's kind of best for everybody. And if you know that you're working together throughout, then you can open the best opportunities you can for that artist. And then promote, and that sort of feeds into the more you work together and the more you understand each other and the more conversation you're having with that promoter, the more they can put you into better slots and put you onto bigger stages and try and work together to build from the ground up. So that's something that we do with like festivals especially, and like that's what we use Live at Leeds for, is that's the start of the journey for some bands. And the more that you keep in conversation and work together, then it kind of works out. I don't want to just throw names about, but we did that with like Ed Sheeran at Live at Leeds. That was his first ever thing, playing upstairs in the cockpit, and because the conversation carried on and that was a good relationship between the artist and the promoter. Obviously it led to bigger things in the end. Experienced promoters can help you with advice. So if you're new or you're new to an area, a good promoter will understand the area and they'll help you come up with a plan a little bit. Especially if you don't have a booking agent. A promoter, they're good to bounce ideas off. Like a lot of us have done this for a long time and we understand the area that we're in very well. And I like talking to artists about their plans, and rather than just being like, what date can I play? And I'll play that show there. I'd rather like have a proper conversation with them and a sort of constant chat with them about their plans. And it just feels like working together like creates better things. And I think that's part of that. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but when you've secured a gig, ask what else the promoter can do for you. So whether that's when you've just got the gig or just after you've played it, speak to them about like, how, if I carry on working with you, how can we grow together? Like, what opportunities can you give me? What can I do? What gigs can I play for you that'll help you out? And sort of like a symbiotic relationship. And if you work together, then that'll help. And promoters have localized data as well. So any good promoter will have mailing list data, social medias with followers in that area, and that helps you grow as well. So once it gets to doing your first maybe if you do some support slots for a promoter, get to know them, and then they do your headline show, they can like start sending mailers out to their database of appropriate fans for your genre. And yeah, a good promoter should be helping with that. And I wanted to talk a bit about booking agents, how they're different from promoters. And yeah, so booking agent is responsible for organising your live career as a whole. So they'll liaise with the promoters to book your shows on your behalf. So at this point, your manager will now speak, or yourself or your manager would speak directly to your booking agent, and your booking agent would speak to the promoter. And that's the chain of command. And that's how, once you've got a booking agent, that's how it would go from then on in. And booking agents are very experienced in laying out plans for you. So they'll like create a live plan. You'll tell them when you're releasing songs, like, I want to release my tune this month and I want to release my EP this month. And a booking agent would be very helpful in sitting down and going, right, well, I would recommend doing big cities at this point, smaller cities at this point, and festivals at this point, and they'll help you do that. They're especially helpful for securing festival slots and support slots, and any opportunity you might not get alone, just because they're like very well connected people that are speaking to lots of promoters. The way it kind of works roughly is that a booking agent generally has big clients and small clients. So if you go to them, if you're their new signing, they'll kind of use their leverage with their bigger client that they've gained through the bigger clients to put together. Sorry, I'm doing a lecture thing. All right.
Well,
cool.
Look up now.
Yeah. Bye. Sorry, our office is still up, and that was the director. Yeah. So the booking agent will help you do things that you can't get alone. And yeah, I thought it was important to say that you've kind of got there's a lot of booking agents that, and I will speak about this in the next slide, but that'll come to you at different points in your career. Not all of them are great, and you don't need to jump into it straight away. So say if you've just launched your project and you're getting a bit of buzz and you're getting a lot of streams, you might start getting people to reach out to you, but it's important not to just go straight into that. And I think once you're ready for a booking agent, you kind of know, and you'll often get a lot of them reach out to you at the same time. So sort of talking from experience, when an artist is getting enough buzz around them that they need an agent, so they've already played some shows on their own, they've built up a bit of a fan base and they've built up a bit of buzz, I'll get multiple agents asking me at the same time, like, have you heard this band? Can you help me out with a slot for this band if I take them on? And it's always the same band. So I think that is the right point. I mean, a manager will help you decide that, but even on your own, I would just recommend waiting. Like, don't do things too early. And once it's ready to do something like getting a booking agent, you'll know. So yeah, for that reason, not a priority early on. Like, a booking agent, it sounds like great. Like, if I get a booking agent, I'll get to play anything, but it doesn't really work like that. And I think before you want a manager, you want to work with different promoters, and you want to get a bit of a name for yourself before you go getting a booking agent. So don't see it as an early priority, as silly as that may seem, because it sounds great to have a booking agent, but I honestly wouldn't prioritize it. I'd prioritize the other things first. We'll speak a little about unreputable promoters and booking agents, and just like little things to watch out for, because I don't really like that there's some people that take advantage of people out there. Not everyone in this industry is super helpful. A good promoter will never ask you for money up front. I think that's important, because some people still do that. So they'll say to you like, oh, if you buy 50 tickets and then you sell them, and they'll charge you a load of money for them, and if you don't sell them, you're liable for the money. Like, that's not a good thing. A promoter that's doing that isn't working with the acts that you want to be. Like, avoid that. The bills that they put on should make sense. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to be like an indie band or a rapper on the bill for it to make sense. Like, I understand that mixed genre bills can be really good, but they should make some sort of sense. Like, they should have a similar audience, or there should be a link between the artists that are on it. It shouldn't just be like 4 random acts smashed on a bill, which is something you see a lot down like in London, actually. If you're ever looking for gigs in London when you're starting out, you'll often get promoters that do both those things, where they'll ask you to buy a load of tickets and they'll put you on artists that make no sense, that you don't align with. So yeah, watch out for that. Look for live footage from promoters' events, or like look at the website for photos or anything to prove that they're legit, basically, and that they're doing good things and that it's somebody you'd want to work with. Check their websites, the socials and listings. Make sure they're working with some bands that you see fit, like some either bigger bands or good bands, or bands that you know can vouch for them. Or yeah, if every single band you've never heard of and or artist you've never heard of, and then it might not be a good sign. And if you do get suspicious about any of the above, it's absolutely fine to talk to people. Like, take a look who else they've worked with. If you know any of them, then great. And if not, just still drop them a message on something and be like, oh, I see you work with so-and-so. They've reached out to us. Would you recommend them? There's also some Facebook groups that are pretty good for that, as people chat about that sort of thing. And then for booking agents, you sometimes get ones that I've seen where they ask you for money for them to book your gigs, which is wrong. Like, they should only take a percentage cut. You shouldn't be paying anything up front, because any good booking agent takes a percentage cut, and that makes sense for everybody, because the better the band does, the bigger they get, the higher the fees are, the more percentage they get. So that's what you should be looking for. I've come up with there's so many ways to network and create opportunities in this industry. Some of them are really hard and some of them are simpler, but I thought I'd go through the ones that I think are useful. Go to shows. I mentioned it earlier. Go and meet people. Go to the ones that are relevant to what you're doing and see people there, because they're probably going to help you in the long run. Engage with the local scene. Again, that can be through going to gigs or getting involved in Facebook groups or any social media group that's based around certain venues or events or festivals or whatever. Speak to people. You'll see the same names or faces cropping up, and they're often good people to speak to. Follow everyone that you think is relevant on social media. Just create, if you don't want to like flood your own social media with just music stuff, create another one and just use it to follow everyone on it. So you've got like a timeline of relevant people that you want to know what they're doing, and then you can see what's happening in your local area. A big networking thing is when you play a show, stick around. It's pretty, and it can be hard. Like you might have work in the morning, or you might need to get back, you might be with the bus or whatever. But if you can, just stick around after you play. If you're on a support, like stick around, watch the other bands, talk to them, talk to their fans, sell your merch is a big one. Like even if you haven't really got any merch, just stand at the merch stand and say, we'll speak to you afterwards at the back. And it's a good way to speak to your fans, but it's also a good way to, if I was at a gig and I just happened to see someone I liked, I would go and talk to them at the merch table after. So it's a good thing to say. Befriend similar artists that you can. Something I see a lot is people like within local scenes thinking that they're somehow in competition, but you're not. Like if more than one artist in an area makes it big, then it just helps everybody else. It kind of creates a scene, and that's why you see different cities playing in different scenes sort of every few years. It's good to try and like be friends with people, and you can all play the same shows and help each other with advice, and that'll knock on and grow a scene. Music industry networking events. This is something I have to do a lot through work, and we go and talk to all different levels of people that we work with and artists, and they seem really daunting. And when I first went to like the Great Escape years ago, I was like terrified getting on that train on my own, thinking like, how am I going to speak to these people? They're not going to care what I have to say. But it's like, you'll get used to it quick, and everyone's in exactly the same boat. There's somebody else there that's in exactly the same boat as you, where they're a new artist and they're like scared about talking to people. But if you just go to them, you get used to it quicker. Again, same faces, you'll meet people in the industry at them. Go at like, if you play a show, stay around after it. Like all those things still apply at those networking events, because it's everyone that you need to speak to is probably there. So if you bump into anybody, then it's a good thing. And a little tip from me is if you try and time your pitches at the same time you do the above. So if you're going to a music, if you're playing like Long Division or Live at Leeds or any sort of like industry tilting event, try and pitch yourself to the people that you think you might see before. If you can if you've just sent an email and then you bump into the person you sent an email to, and they've happened to listen to your track, or they've got it at the top of their inbox, like that's really helpful. And if you try and, it's kind of what I said about making a plan. If you think about these things before and try and organize it into a timeline, then it can pay off. I think this is the last slide. I just did a little bit on gigging in 2022 and post-COVID and how it's a little bit different, which it is different, and it's tough at the minute in some ways. Gigs are still getting cancelled, and ticket sales can be tough still, and refunds, and it's a lot different than it was pre-COVID. But I wanted to like focus on some positives of it. I've seen it as a big resetting of the live market. Like a lot of artists had time to reevaluate it, and ones that have been around for a while got a chance to see like, is this still for me or not? And coming out of it now, it's like there was a lot of artists where it was confusing as to where they were in their plan and if they were going to carry on. And a lot of them have either like stopped or they've started a new thing. But it's almost like starting afresh, I feel, as a promoter. And I think for that, it's a good time to be a new artist. Also, a lot of people have had time over lockdown to reflect or write. So there seems to be some good stuff coming up around that. This is a big one that we see probably weekly, is that bands still keep cancelling. And it's often support bands. So support bands will pull out because they're ill or they're COVID or whatever. And it's a really, like, if you just keep in contact with those promoters that you're talking to, because we regularly now are putting on local bands into tour support slots, which are generally better slots because the tour support's pulled out. So I would keep an eye on that, and you might end up with like a really great gig, or like you might end up playing a sold out bigger gig because somebody's dropped out last minute and you need a band. So if you're in the local area and can make that happen, then you can pretty good gig out of it. Long term, if you're looking, if I was like a new artist now and I was making a plan, I would start at autumn. Like, everything is so congested at the minute, and there's probably not a lot to be gained other than jumping on last minute stuff. There's not a lot to be gained in the next few months. So start from autumn in your plan and your release plan, and go from there.